Read the disclaimer!
Let me put it to you this way. A man by the name of John Gardner once had this to say about plot. Real suspense comes with moral dilemma and the courage to make and act upon choices. False suspense comes from the accidental and meaningless occurrence of one damned thing after another. What better film is there, then, to illustrate what false suspense looks like than Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is a film directed by Joe Johnston as his directorial debut and written by Ed Naha and Tom Schulman, based on the story by Stuart Gordon, Brian Usna, and Ed Naha, and stars Rick Moranis as the man on the DVD cover. There are a few things worth noting about the production for the film. First is the budget, which was on the lower end for its time at approximately $18 million, though it grossed at $131 million. I think part of the film's success has to do with the fact that Joe Johnston knew how to make efficient use of that budget. I find that interesting because certain films these days apparently don't, i.e. the new Ghostbusters movie. The other thing of interest I would like to discuss is the behind-the-scenes business. Originally, Stuart Gordon, one of the people credited for the story, was originally intended to be the director for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but then he got sick, which led to Johnston taking control of the project, starting with a screenplay, which he had rewritten by Schulman because at the time the draft was too dependent on effects and the characters lacked any sort of dimension. That's interesting when you consider that the elaborate sets took months to build and that the parent scenes were filmed first so that the effects-heavy scenes could be shot with less trouble. The theatrical and VHS releases also started off with a Roger Rabbit short called Tummy Troubles. Well, IMDb only said theatrical. I knew about the VHS release because I used to watch Honey, I Shrunk the Kids on VHS all the time as a kid. However, because I only have the DVD release, I cannot talk about the pre-show short. Instead, I will begin with the feature-length film proper. Which starts out with an animated title sequence. The animated title sequence isn't really part of the plot, but it does promise a great deal of madness for later on. I have to say that some of the objects are well formed here, perhaps too well formed. I'm not sure if 3D animated technology was good enough back then to merge with 2D animation seamlessly, or if these objects were rotoscoped. After that, we open on the film proper, with the Thompsons and the Zelinskys.
Good morning, Quark.
In addition to the dog, Quark, get it, as in one of the elementary particles that make up all matter in the universe. We also meet Nick and Amy Zelinsky doing pre-breakfast things, like scaring the dog off and burning toast while talking to a friend at school.
Mom and Dad had an argument last night, and Mom spent the night at Grandma's. I think she just needed a rest.
Then we meet their father Wayne, who is working intensely on the scary-looking machine.
Breakfast.
I'll be down in 5 minutes. Typing with his gloves on again.
You're correct, Amy, but I think your father's screwing with you. Have you taken a look at a standard QWERTY keyboard? You have to either purposely spell mimics instead of minutes, or modern autocorrect existed back then too. We are then introduced to the Thompsons, mainly Russell and May.
Zelinsky! Give it a rest! It's Saturday!
Obviously, he doesn't really like the fact that Wayne is doing science next door. He goes to give Wayne a piece of his mind when we meet Ron.
Hold it, Dad. Don't move.
Ron, what are you doing?
Defending the backyard, Dad.
That's my fishing rod!
Dad, stop!
Anyway, back to the Zelinskys.
Stay back, boy. This thing works. This will put us right up there with the invention of electricity. First man in space. First dog in space.
Didn't the first dog in space die a few hours after the mission started? And wasn't that dog Soviet-Russian? You know what? I suspect Quark is a dirty commie traitor. So Wayne puts his machine to the test on an apple. Instead of shrinking the apple explodes in his face. That's what she said.
On the other hand, we've come up with an interesting way of making applesauce.
Then we meet Russell. To make things simple, I will call the dad of the family Senior and the eldest son Junior for the rest of the review. Anyway, Junior isn't as enthused as Senior about the fishing trip the whole family is going to go on for the weekend. Product placement! I have to say, as much as everyone is quirky, I like how believable every character is in the film, except Junior. He's bland like Kristen Stewart's default facial expression.
Dad, don't forget my dress from the cleaners, Nick's allergy pills.
It's all in my head, don't worry.
Wish me luck. Good luck getting out of this door.
Hold on a second, did Wayne just eat that piece of paper just now?
Dad! It's Mom!
Where?
On the phone!
Then we meet Diane, who is a real estate agent, and pretty much the only employed adult in the household. Now that we've met everyone in the main cast, I'd like to talk about a few things that I like about the film, more specifically, the characters themselves. The Zelensky family lives in a state of perpetual chaos. Insert joke about entropy and thermodynamics here. This is due to Wayne's obsession with a shrink ray that promises to be revolutionary, but comes at a cost to family well-being, but with Wayne and Diane having had fights prior to the movie. The Thompsons, however, are the opposite. They are doing everything they can to do things as a family, such as their fishing trip. But that's not because everyone enjoys each other's company, but because Senior wants to hold up some sort of family ideal, especially with Junior. Then you have the children of each respective family. Amy acts like a typical teenager, but she is aware enough to understand how important Wayne's work is to him, what with her trying to get Wayne to come to breakfast. Junior, however, doesn't have any interest in being around his father. Then again, he doesn't have any interest in anything. Nick clearly sees Wayne as a role model to look up to, but he doesn't get much praise from his father for emulating him. Ron takes after Senior, though he goes to further extremes than is even comfortable for Senior, so much so he gets scolded for the superglue arrow. Finally, I like how each property is a contrast to how each family presents themselves. In the very first scene, you see that the Thompsons' property is clean and immaculate, like some suburban ideal, and you see the Zelensky's property is poorly maintained and chaotic. Insert joke about entropy and thermodynamics again here. Hell, their names contrast each other, with Thompson being something waspy and Zelensky being weird and unanglicized. So back to the story. Wayne leaves for work and gives his kids the task to clean the house.
Good luck.
Nick shows some kid the lawnmower, not because he wants to show off the novelty of the machine being remote controlled, but also to set it up in accordance to the rules of Chekhov's gun. Seriously, that kid is about as bland as Junior, except he gets less screen time.
Nothing like a hard day's
Hey, Russ, pitch for me.
No, I'm too busy brooding. Or whatever teenagers do in 1989. You know, if this movie took place a couple years later, Junior would be grunge like Nirvana, and nothing in the script would change. Senior confronts Junior about his bland personality.
Fishing isn't your thing. Weights aren't your thing. Just what is your thing?
My thing's sound effects. Here's a T-Rex.
Another thing that I like about the film is the cinematography, and this moment really stands out to me when Ron hits the baseball into the Zelensky's attic, even if the hint about what will happen isn't subtle at the slightest.
Grin! Slam.
So the baseball causes the machine to go haywire and shrink everything. This causes Junior to be possessed by the plot to take Ron over to take responsibility. Nick takes Ron up and... Wayne, meanwhile, holds a conference where he explains how his machine works.
Mr. Zelensky, are you trying to tell me that suddenly size is no longer relative?
Well, that's right, Professor Fredrickson, that all matter is made up of not only density, but of empty space. And if we can proportionally reduce the amount of empty space in any given object, we can thereby shrink the object.
You have, however, managed to shrink one thing, the size of this audience. Gentlemen, ladies, I don't know about you, but I'm going to lunch.
the conference doesn't go well. Back at home, Amy and Junior examine the attic to find Ron and Nick, only for the machine to shrink them too. That 80s electricity effect! In seriousness, the special and practical effects are amazing for the movie's time, especially given the film's $18 million budget as compared to Tim Burton's Batman and Back to the Future. As much as I admire Johnston's work here, there are times where his attention to detail slips. I will get to some of those details when I get to them. Wayne returns home to find that his kids are missing, there's a hole in his attic window, and he is angry with his shrink ray due to the humiliation at the conference earlier. Naturally, he takes his rage out on it, and sweeps all the pieces of machinery and glass into the garbage, along with the kids, whom he then throws out like garbage, because he threw them in with the garbage. The kids somehow tear out of the garbage bag to find themselves in the backyard. I have to say, that tear seems bigger than necessary.
Something tells me we're not going fishing this weekend.
That should make you happy.
Blow it out your shorts, Ron.
Oh, that's right. This is a Disney movie. The language has to be family-friendly, even if it doesn't reflect the language that teenagers actually use. Or anyone, really.
I'll give him a break. I'll break his arm.
Blow it out your shorts, Ron.
We're rich!
It's not a river, dope. Could be a stream of dog pee and it'd look like a river to us.
Fair warning, if it seems like that from here on out I'm going through the plot faster than I was before, that's because there aren't many scenes with real suspense.
We're now a quarter of an inch tall and 64 feet from the house. It's the equivalent of 3.2 miles.
I will remember that for future reference. Actually, I will point out again that the hole in the garbage bag looks much bigger than a quarter inch. Also, why did Nick continue to press buttons as he's reading out the final result on his calculator? Diane returns and shares the news that she finally sold a house to some random couple who will show up later in the movie.
Yeah, you know that big estate? The Borsteins bought it. I only had to show it to them 12 times. How'd your conference go?
Oh, I got a lot of laughs.
Ha 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 ha. You will always get a laugh from me, Minnie S.R. Rock. So, on to the kids' adventure. They find a T-Rex, they find a dead bug on holiday, and Nick gets an idea to call Quark.
You know how to whistle? You just put your lips together and blow.
That's what she said! Nick falls into a flower, and Diane calls for Amy and Nick. Okay, when the kids first shrank, Quark's and Wayne's voices became deeper and slightly slower from their experience. That makes sense given that, because they are smaller, the vibrations of noise would affect them differently. Why is Diane's voice normal? Did Johnston forget to change her voice too? Or everyone's voices after this point? So Nick and Junior ride on a bee, which Wayne swats at with a baseball bat.
If the Borsteins come by, their escrow papers are in my briefcase. You think you can handle that?
There was a bee on me.
That's a huge overreaction to a bee, Wayne. Staying still would help it leave you alone.
Wait a second. Nick doesn't play baseball?
With that revelation, Wayne somehow figures out that a baseball flew into his window and activated his machine, and found out that it actually works in shrinking things. Things including his children. He investigates the garbage bag. Wait, I thought the hole was bigger. And Wayne comes to the conclusion that his kids are in the backyard, and he risks squishing them, if he hasn't done so already.
When we crashed, my entire life flashed before my eyes. Didn't take too long.
Junior and Nick live, though Junior's still bland. Ron and Amy bicker, and Wayne activates the sprinklers with his stilts when he's trying to find his kids. So, there is time dilation with the water, but nowhere else? Both sets of kids meet each other again, and Amy falls down. How the hell could a 17-year-old drown in fluid like that?
It's very delicate, the lawn. You don't want to overwater, really.
Ha 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 ha. It's funny because he's making a fool of himself to be more normal. Junior rescues Amy, who is obviously still conscious for someone who just drowned.
Get away.
And Amy lives. Fun fact, an earlier draft originally had 5 kids instead of 4, and that one of those kids was supposed to die during this water sprinkler scene. That would have made the movie so much darker. Diane calls from the mall. Oh, she went to the mall to find the kids, and Wayne created a suspension contraption to avoid contact with the ground. Meanwhile, at the Thompsons, Kitty! Also, Senior and May are worried. I think. Then some friends arrive. However, because Junior and Ron haven't returned, Senior has to talk to his friend.
Confidentially, I haven't been feeling too well. Plumbing.
Plumbing?
Did they just make a period joke in a Disney movie? Speaking of risque jokes from Disney.
Where'd you learn artificial respiration?
French class, kid.
Oh. French class. French class.
Nick, I know you are a preteen, but you are seriously dense. They find a cookie, they tame an ant which they think is a baby male even though it's actually an adult female, and...
Quark, sit. Sit, Quark. Stop. Sit. Sit, boy. Drop it.
Oh, okay, it's 6:46.
Where in the world did that water come from?
Mrs. Thompson.
646 Sycamore. Yes.
The kids write in and the Thompsons speak to the police.
You were kind of upset about Russ quitting the team, hon.
Quit? I thought he was cut.
He was afraid to tell you he quit.
Quit? What do you mean he was afraid to tell me? He can tell me anything he wants. You know me, I'll always listen.
Russell, there's a few things about yourself I think you should know.
Well, like what?
Well, that's an interesting character moment. Moving on, Wayne gives Diane some good news and bad news.
You did it. It works. The machine works. Do the kids know?
Well, yeah, the kids know.
That's great.
It's not that great.
Why?
I shrunk the kids.
Hence the title! I have to ask about how he knows the Thompson kids have shrank. The way he knows about what happened to his kids is reasonably shaky at best. I mean, again, how did he know about the baseball? The kids release the ant, but the ant decides to stay. The Zelinsky parents search in the backyard for their kids, and Senior lights a cigarette.
You see anything yet?
It's too thick.
No. That's too cliche, even for that's what she said jokes. The kids make use of the lit cigarette, and the Zelinskys tell the Thompsons.
How did this happen?
Well, the machine analyzes the molecular structure of each compound, and then through laser inversion, it takes all...
Wait. I think the Thompsons need to see the couch. Why didn't you tell us earlier? Well, until now, the machine just blew things up. Are you saying that machine
Blew up my kids?
No. If the machine had blown up the kids, there'd be pieces of them everywhere.
Wayne, the idea that a kid was supposed to die in earlier drafts of the screenplay is dark enough to think about. Let's not bring that darkness to the film.
I have got an air hammer in my attic, and if you did do something to my kids, there's gonna be pieces of you all over the neighborhood! Come on, honey.
I think that went well.
I think we should have them over more often.
I thought you didn't believe him.
Oh, I don't. Electricity's cheap.
The kids find a Lego and decide to camp for the night. Junior acts like a gentleman, but he's still bland. The Zelinsky parents have a touching moment where they decide that things must change.
That's another thing I'm worried about. Amy, in the dark, with little Russ Thompson.
Junior and Amy romance, and the scorpion attacks. They fight it away with the ant, but the ant dies from the poison. Wayne repairs the shrink ray into the night, and the kids have fortified their Lego. Chekhov's kid returns and begins to cut the lawn. Why is it that the grass looks like it's cut already? Or does everyone in the neighborhood have high standards to make every yard look like an English garden? Come to think of it, the grass in the backyard doesn't look overgrown at all throughout this movie. Especially with the grass being that high and the kids being a 1/4 inch tall.
Together. 1, 2, 3. Tommy, can you hear me?
Then Tommy stops and the kids are safe. Product placement! Quark carries the kids to safety, but then Nick falls into Wayne's cereal. Then Wayne tries to eat Nick, Quark bites Wayne, and the parents finally find their kids. Wayne explodes another apple, kids play charades to tell them about the baseball. I thought Wayne already knew about the baseball. Senior volunteers to be the guinea pig, and the kids are restored to normal size, but not before Junior asks Amy out to the dance, and she says yes because she owes him for saving her life from drowning. The film ends with a Christmas dinner where both families have a great time. I wonder if anyone else remembers that given how the shrink ray works, they are not eating more turkey or dog biscuit, but are actually consuming more space between molecules and atoms. With a possibility of them getting full before they get nutrients from the food, I guess one can say they are literally eating empty calories.
Hey, wait! I get it! French class!
Yes, let's close off the movie neat and tidy with a callback to a joke from after the biggest near-death experience in the entire movie. The biggest flaw with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is easily the plot and the plot structure. You can argue that the 3-act structure still exists, but there is no proper series of beats that brings any moral dilemma or choices to the characters. It's all just a series of one dumb thing after another. From the perspective of Blake Snyder's 15-beat paradigm, this movie is a complete mess, especially with how the midpoint relates to the rest of the movie. In most other Hollywood films, the midpoint is either the false defeat or false victory of the story, depending on if the story has a sad ending or happy ending respectively. In this case, the midpoint and the ending don't match up at all in terms of tone. In fact, the midpoint is indistinguishable from the rest of the scenes in the backyard jungle in terms of significance. If you can't clearly define a midpoint in a way that doesn't involve looking at the time or page number, then you can't really say you have a well-structured story. Aside from these grievances, I still think the characters are the best thing about the story since they are interesting and there is more depth to each interaction, which is more than can be said for Brad Pitt's zombie movie. Obviously, the special and practical effects were amazing for their time, even if they weren't entirely seamless. Overall, I recommend watching Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Just remember to take your nostalgia goggles off when you watch it. Oh, before I forget, I've come up with a list of anagrams for Rick Moranis' name. We already have Rick as Moran, Minnie as O'Rourke, but there is also Morris as Ink, Kissin' Korma, and Mac and Rios. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe. If you like what I have to say, please like this video and follow me on Twitter. If you have any thoughts you would like to share, please leave a comment below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.